Good evening from New York. The idea and the spectacle of forcing Republicans to vote against tax cuts for the middle class is still on the mat, but it has not been counted out. Our fifth story, amid background-level White House dismay that Senate Democrats bailed out on just such a fight. Some encouragement there because of the evidence that Speaker Nancy Pelosi will schedule the vote and the fight in the House before it adjourns next week. To the Speaker first, who today said the House retained the right to proceed as we choose on middle-class tax cuts.
America's middle class will have a tax cut. It will be done in this Congress. There is no question about that. A guarantee that we will have a tax cut for the middle class. Members overwhelmingly support that. There isn't a person in our caucus that isn't for tax cuts for the middle class. And it's not about the election, it's about the policy, and we're all very strong on that, and members with a vote or without a vote can go home and talk about their commitment to that, especially with the leadership of President Obama being out there on it.
As TPM reports, Speaker Pelosi could schedule two separate tax votes and do so under a suspension of the rules, which would then require a two-thirds supermajority for passage. The middle-class tax vote would put all members on record. The vote on tax cuts for the wealthy would fail under this theory because even if conservative Democrats sided with Republicans, two-thirds would not be reached. And there is evidence that House Democrats are still trying to reach consensus on some kind of vote. A proposal from Congressman Michael Capuano of Massachusetts and Congressman Bill Pascrell of New Jersey would include a one-year extension of tax cuts on income under $500,000, as well as a 5-year extension of current middle-class tax rates. According to the Huffington Post's Sam Stein, Blue Dog Democrats are still pushing for a temporary extension of additional tax cuts for the wealthiest 2% of Americans, offset by spending cuts. Meantime, what almost happened in the Senate? Key Democrats pushed for a vote, according to Greg Sargent of the Plumline blog. Among them, Senator Chuck Schumer, the former chair of the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee, and Senator Robert Menendez, the current chair of that committee. According to an unnamed source, Schumer believed that Republicans were wary of such a vote. Quoting Sargent's source, it became clear that McConnell didn't want to have a vote. If McConnell sensed that it was a tell for the Democrats that there was a political advantage in having it, that's why Chuck was privately pushing for it. But, of course, yesterday we learned through a spokesperson that Senate Leader Harry Reid will wait until after Election Day. And an unnamed aide telling Sargent, quote, people felt like, why rock the boat on a good situation? People weren't sure how having a vote would affect that dynamic. We would have lost Democrats on certain aspects of the vote. Who knows if the media would cover that as Democrats being splintered? In a way, the good polling gave people faith that we don't need to do anything on the issue because we're already winning. On that note, let's bring in Washington Post staff reporter, Newsweek columnist, and MSNBC contributor Ezra Klein. Ezra, it's good to see you in person. My understanding is that the White House is still holding out some hope about Speaker Pelosi. Is she determined to have the vote? Is she testing the waters? Where is it?
She's definitely testing the waters. I mean, this is an interesting rule she's thinking of bringing it up under. What she's worried about if she brings it up normally is that she brings up the middle-class tax cuts, they pass, but Republicans use a procedural move to bring up the rich tax cuts too, and they pass, and she doesn't want that. The policy, as she said, is the point for her. So if she uses a suspension rule, then you need two-thirds on both, and you're not going to get that on one, but you may get it on the other. That is a pretty rare move. I mean, it's part of the 111th Congress's ongoing effort to show us every congressional rule that could conceivably ever be used. But it'd be quite a way to end it.
Yeah, my parliamentary procedure professor at Cornell would be delighted by this entire process. But to what point does it increase the theatrics while reducing the chance of the tax cut actually going through? I mean, it doesn't change anything in the Senate. They're still going to ride this out and pretend, right?
Well, she's used to that. There are currently 372 bills that the House has passed, the Senate is sitting on. So they will try to pass it, and they will see what they can get done. And then the Senate, they sort of have operated all year under the understanding that they can't control the Senate. They can only control the House. And Pelosi just tries to move when she can move. She's always said she'll move when she's got the votes. So if she goes in next week, it's because she thinks she's got the votes.
My further understanding is that the White House was, surprisingly enough, disappointed in the decisions by Senate Democrats to sort of mail this in, as I phrased it before, that they just want to campaign on the, you know how we're going to vote on it, it doesn't matter that we didn't vote yet. It's dandy that the White House is being disappointed, but is there not some knocking of heads to be done in this situation? Are they really that impotent when it comes to the Senate moving at something slower than a snail's pace?
Generally, they are. I mean, Reid is concerned, again, that the worst thing for that to happen to all of them, right, is they campaign against the extension of the rich tax cuts, hold the vote, and lose it. And they lose it because Democrats move over. Ben Nelson moves over. A couple others move over. Now, maybe that would happen, maybe it wouldn't, but if Reid thinks there's a chance, the White House's leverage on him is quite weak. I mean, in some ways, the best thing for them to do is say, we're very, very disappointed, but it's Reid who's got to sort of bear the brunt of losing or winning this one. So the scary thing here is Democrats may think they're winning on the politics, but they are not sure they have the votes. They just are not sure they can repel the Republicans plus a couple splintering Democrats to extend the Bush tax cuts for the rich.
Are they whistling past the actual campaign graveyard, though, to assume that they can get this point across to the electorate in every quarter? No, we're going to do this. You know where we stand. The polling is so good that we don't have to take the vote because you trust us without the vote and you don't trust the Republicans on this. Does that make sense anywhere outside of the Washington zip codes?
No, it really looks awful. And it looks right before the election that even with a majority, they can't currently govern. Even with a popular issue, even with something where most of their caucus appears united, they can't govern, and they're not courageous enough. So you do have a situation where you have this big enthusiasm gap in the election. The Republicans get to say, well, you know, we want these cuts. Our people are promising it to us. And the Democratic base is sort of, again, hearing, yeah, we're with you in theory, but we just... You know, the rules of the Senate. It's a tough game up here.
Fortunately, Speaker Pelosi has brought in those plate spinners that we used to see on the Ed Sullivan Show, who will do a demonstration for us and show us new rules that we didn't know about before. Ezra Klein of the Washington Post and Newsweek and MSNBC. As I said, pleasure to see you in person, sir.